So, as of this recording, last week I did some trainings on the nervous system since a lot of my work involves somatics and a holistic view of the person as related to fitness and health, exercise in our bodies. I am fascinated by the nervous system, and I'll explain what the things I learned have to do with exercise and food because they have a lot. Basically, our nervous system is our body's communication system. It takes in information from our nerves, different types of nerves, and sends signals to the brain. It also communicates with each other. So it's basically the way that we talk. And as someone who studied linguistics and is really into words and communication, this is kind of like the non-verbal communication of our bodies, not just with the world around us and with others, but within ourselves. So it's pretty important and pretty cool. So basically, we have a way of, there are different, and of course, I'm not an expert in this. Go and learn more. This is not a nervous system 101 class. This is just me sharing some insights. So go educate yourself beyond this if you would like. But our nervous system kind of tells us how we feel in the world, to put it in a simple way. It controls our breathing and, again, communicates through neurons in our body systems. But it controls the systems that are both intentional, so to speak, and unintentional. So if we feel in danger, our bodies will naturally go create some physiological responses like dilated pupils, sweat, an urge to fight or flee. If we feel safe, there's slower breathing. There's kind of a relax and digest part of our nervous system that goes into play. And we each have different capacity for what feels safe. And if we've experienced trauma or unsafe situations, our bodies will have different responses after those situations. So whether it's an emotional place of unsafety or emotional threat or a physical threat, it could be sexual, it could be social. So if there is something that makes us feel has made us feel unsafe, it could be chronic and it could be small. It could be one event that was huge, even a car accident. All these things affect our body's way of communicating, so to speak, thereafter. And we each have a different window of capacity for how we feel safe. And a healthy nervous system will go up and down, up and down. So there might be a stressor or something that maybe puts us a little bit higher in our response, like, oh, on guard, and then we'll realize that it's okay, and then we'll come down. So our sympathetic and our parasympathetic nervous system, and there are subcategories for this as well, will kind of like play together, so to speak, and there will be small ups and downs throughout our days. But if we are in a place of chronic unsafety, let's just say it's higher than that middle place of feeling connected, safe, trusting, and playful, that window of capacity for where we feel safe. If we are in a place where we don't feel safe, we'll go into a higher agitation or higher energy where we might feel irritable, we might feel angry, we might feel frustration or impulsive, we might feel defensive. And if we go even higher than that, where we're really in a place of feeling like survival mode, we can be panicked, we could feel rage, we could feel terror, we could feel a super hypervigilance, and that's our fight, flight, or freeze. We might even shut down, kind of like an avoidance state. And then on the lower end, if we are below that window of capacity, We might feel despondent, kind of like hopeless, like what's the point? And then in the extreme, just like in the fight, flight, or freeze for the really high survival mode, in the extreme low mode, we can go into this place where we feign death, so to speak. So we feel numb, we feel shut down, we feel shame, we feel despair. And some of us are in a chronic state of that arousal of feeling on edge. And you probably know what it feels like. Maybe if you've been burnt out or in a stressful job environment or your home environment was unsafe, you might be familiar with that. Some of us are in constant survival mode where maybe our resources are questioned, we don't have the support that we need. And then some of us can really be in that lower despondent or really low, that dead, playing dead kind of state often. And that might look like depression. It might look like shame and despair and despondency. And we can move through these states throughout the day, throughout our lifetimes, through different seasons. And a lot of it depends again on our experience and what we perceive as threats as well, because sometimes our nervous system, bless it, will see something that might not really be posing a threat to us as something that is posing a threat. Or even when we are in a hyperarousal state, small things feel bigger than they are because we're in hypervigilance, trying to stay safe. So our nervous system is ultimately trying to protect us and giving us warning signals for what is safe, what is dangerous. So we don't need to turn it off. That's not the point of nervous system health or regulation. It's not about stopping anything bad from happening or never having any stressors. It's more about learning to notice what is happening in our bodies as we have these reactions. And when we are in that, hyperarousal or hypoarousal, when we're not in that window of safe capacity for feeling safe, it's almost like our brains, the functioning part of our brains that are helpful for logic and problem solving, shut down, and the amygdala, the part of our body that is, about survival, or like the old evolutionary reptilian brain, goes on to like beast mode and is like, oh, I'm gonna, protect you. Like the Hulk, think of like gorilla, like Hulk. Yeah, like Hulk isn't really thinking, like that's kind of like a good example because Hulk is like the doctor in his, I don't know, quote unquote regular state. But then when he becomes Hulk, it's like he's going to destroy everything. He's angry. He's really in that fight mode and he's not thinking logically. So that can kind of be a good metaphor for our amygdala. It's like if it feels threatened, it's going to go into, I'm threatened, I feel unsafe, I'm going to attack, or I'm going to fight, or I'm going to freeze and shut down. And some of us, depending on our experiences, have a preferred way of feeling safe. So some of us may feel safer in that lower state where we are just still, where we're not called to action, and we can be kind of under the radar. That can be a fawning response where it's just like, whatever you want, I'll just do whatever you want just to protect ourselves. And that playing dead is like the ultimate trying to protect yourself. It's like, if I don't move, if I don't have any demands, if I can just kind of dissociate or leave, then that is safer than trying to fight or to run away, because in some cases we can't. So sometimes stillness feels more unsafe for others or in different situations. And I'm recalling to mind some just like personal experiences or experiences of people I know personally that I love who I can understand how this plays out. And it's just, it's sad that there are so many threats to some people more than others. People in the minority often are threatened more. And how much abuse and assault and even micro traumas and macro traumas around racism and sexism and even fat shaming. All of these memories get stored in the body, and that's why working with your trauma from a safe place with a professional can be so helpful, and really undoing a lot of the injuries that have been done to us in the presence of a compassionate witness is so healing. And again, the goal is not to never feel bad. And unfortunately, we can often protect ourselves from unsafety, but sometimes we don't and we can't. And it's just sometimes unfortunate, painful things happen to us regardless of our actions. There's no one, we're victims to unfortunate circumstances. And again, a lot of that in our society depends on what kind of body we're born in and where we stand socially, unfortunately. And it shouldn't be that way. And so many people, like the work that I do, is aiming to undo a lot of that, especially for me with fat shaming, or even just all the shame that we have around our bodies. It doesn't have to just do with weight or appearance, but the shame that we have around our bodies. So we can learn tools and build skills and really heal. I know this because I've done it, and it's not really always fun, and it's not always easy, and I'm still really, really learning how to do this. I'm sure you can relate to me, especially if you listen to this podcast. But I'm going to answer the question based on everything I just shared for the past 10 minutes or so. What does this have to do with exercise? What does this have to do with food? And I'll start with exercise. I've seen this a lot with clients, and even going through these trainings helped me to see this more clearly. There tends to be two broad groups when it comes to exercise, especially when people feel a lot of, I would say, shame or disappointment or frustration, or maybe an acknowledgement that their habits are not really serving them and their health. So one group will identify more with being lazy. And I don't mean that they are lazy, but they identify as being lazy, and they prefer to be inactive and still. They might say, and you might relate to this as well, that you struggle with feeling motivated to exercise. And a lot of the people in this category have experienced some social by proxy, depending on what category they identify with, or personal injustices or traumas, I could say, around exercise, maybe feeling like they never fit into that, athletic category, or maybe there was a shaming incident in a gym class in middle school or high school, or maybe they are in a bigger body and they might feel from society that they are not athletes or able to be active, or for whatever reason early on or at some point in life they identify with being lazy. And it can also be a response to the next group that I'm talking about. So if you have been in the second group that I'm about to share, you might go to the first group after a while just because you're burnt out. So this other group that I can identify in my work and seeing with clients is that they identify with maybe being a hustler, very athletic, maybe at some point. They work really hard. They're really into tracking and being disciplined. They prefer to be super busy. It's hard for them to sit still. They might tend to overdo exercise. So these are two groups. And if you look at the nervous system, you can see there's the hypoarousal and the hyperarousal. And you can change with seasons. Maybe some season in your life you identify with one, and then another you identify with another. But something that can be common for the second group, the overactive group, I'll call it, uh, even though there's no real standard for what an active person should be, I'll just use that term overactive. It might take a little while for them to realize that they have an issue because this type is glorified in our society. We call it disciplined and motivated, and a lot of the times disordered exercise behavior goes unnoticed in the name of fitness, which is why it can be so dangerous. And in the other group, they might feel more shame naturally because they're not as active, or they're not participating in fitness, and by proxy they're unhealthy, and both can be unhealthy. It's more a matter of what you're doing and why and how. And some of us just gravitate through different parts of our lives. We gravitate more towards one than the other. I will say I haven't really much identified with the first group throughout my life, maybe a little bit around puberty, but for most of my life, if it was either extreme, it was the second group of overactive versus underactive. And that was, and even studies show that when you are in a state of starvation or under eating, it's almost easier. You would think it's the opposite, but it's almost easier to be hyperactive. There's some survival thing that kicks in your brain where it feels good to do more. So how do we get to a safer place with exercise? If you identify with one of these, and maybe right now you're in a great place with exercise where you're in that window of capacity, exercise feels joyful and there's no extremes and you feel connected and safe, and that's great. That's the best place to start building with knowledge and skills. But if you're not there, the knowledge and skills won't be as helpful until you start to feel safer with your body. And it's true, exercise is a useful tool for regulation, and there's different ways that we can move to help benefit us. But it can also be a way of expressing a dysregulated nervous system and keeping us in that, hypoarousal or hyperarousal. And there might be, a way for you to find safety with exercise. I know for me, like I said before, I was overactive. I used to be, up until maybe the evolution of the 4-H method, when I started practicing it myself a couple years ago, I was really uncomfortable with being still. And I know that had something to do with my anxiety as well, the restlessness. I was more the hyperactive. And there were times in my life, of course, where I was depressed and would go into, hypoarousal, as I'm sure you can relate to in different times of your life. And the 4-H method has helped me so much with it, because I used to have to move or tire myself out to feel okay. It was like I needed that release. And exercise was really my main outlet for stress at so many points in my life. And exercise is a tool, but it's just one tool. So really important, especially in the culture that we live in, going back to those traumas around our bodies and around exercise. A lot of us have had negative experiences, like when I talk about a few episodes ago, the Fit for TV documentary. You think about fitness as like, you have to do this, and there's like the yelling, and there's like the high expectations to lose weight, and exercise can be a punishment, or even a false sense of success and achievement when we're really in an unhealthy place of overdoing it. So how do you feel or safer with exercise? And first of all, you might have already done this just listening, but can you identify where you are now? Like, do you identify more at this time in your life with someone who is underactive or overactive? And it might be with exercise, it might be in other areas of your life where you're go, 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 and you can't sit still. And you might not really exercise, but it might be that hyperactive state, or you might be in that hypoactive state where it's really hard to rally yourself to get to do things, and you just feel a little despondent, a little bit low. And just identify, where are you at right now? And something I learned in this summit, with these trainings, is that sometimes we feel like, okay, if I'm hyper aroused, I need to go straight to that low place of feeling super calm. So if you're feeling really anxious and like tense, you might be like, okay, I need to take some deep breaths and just really calm myself. But that can sometimes be too big of a jump. You're kind of jumping over that window of capacity in between where you feel safe. And it can be better sometimes to like maybe have still some activity, just more intentional and lower intensity activity. So maybe shaking your hands out or doing something that's in between like a still place and that hyperactive place. And same for if you're feeling very lethargic, to go from nothing to something might be like really high intensity, like a power workout might be too much. But if you can maybe start with gentle movement, maybe something like stretching or yoga, or even like slow strength training, endurance type state training or walking, can be enough to kind of get you up higher towards that window of capacity. So first identifying where you are now. And then another thing is, so that is super helpful. And this is just helpful in general for having a human body. Bless. Start to notice how your body feels when you feel stressed, like when you start to feel activated. Can you notice what happens? And if you've done therapy, your therapist might have, encouraged you to do this, but this is good for fitness. This is good for health. This is good for our mental health, emotional health. Just checking in, noticing, oh, I noticed that my heart is racing. I noticed that like I just feel this like tightness in my throat, or I notice that I'm feeling like this restlessness. And your body might have certain cues, and working with someone who can notice that can be helpful, but just starting to notice. And one thing that is super helpful is body scans, and they can feel so boring, honestly, and so pointless, but they can be so helpful for just getting in touch with your body. It's like learning the language of your body. There's an episode called Do This Practice to Recenter Yourself Now, where I basically take you through a body scan and kind of becoming aware of your environment. That can be helpful, a helpful practice, totally for free. Download it, listen to it as much as you need to. And the last thing I want to share with you of like these tips is like identify where you are now, practice body scans to notice what's coming up in your body, and to notice where you might be going when you're stressed or something is activated in you. And again, depending on what's going on in your body, you might need different things, and that's a skill that you have to learn, especially when it comes to exercise. And that's one reason that the 4-H method exists. It's not just about following a set schedule or routine of workouts, but learning to connect with your body so that you become more skilled at knowing what your body needs. And that's a practice, and it's really helpful to do it in a structure and with support. So the last thing, again, and this is what happens when you start practicing this, is you learn to feel more safe with exercise, not just through education and learning the, societal impacts and the science around exercise. That can be helpful, and that's also what I share in the 4-H method and in my work, but learning to feel safe. So if you tend to overdo it and be in that second group of, hyperactive, you can learn to feel safe with gentler movements or even no exercise. Learn to feel better with less and feel safe in your body, so you don't have to constantly be moving or doing something or achieving something. Or if you feel like you've had a lot of negative experiences around exercise and workouts, And you can start to feel safe with movement, and it can be joyful for you, and it can feel affirming for you, not for the purpose of weight loss or body recomp, but just because it feels good to move. And if you identify with either of these camps, so to speak, if you are overactive, I recommend listening to my podcast episode, How to Stop Being So Obsessed with Exercise. It gives you more tips. And the second one, if you would identify with the first group of like hypoactive, you don't have to, the episode I recommend to you is you don't have to love exercise, but you might after this. And I know you're probably like, I don't know, she's going to tell me to do something anyways. I really recommend you listen to it. And if you feel off with it, let me know. I'd be happy to hear it. I also have a free guide in the link in my bio called the Free Enjoy Movement Guide, and that can help you undo a lot of the shittiness around exercise and return to your body. But something I've noticed, and I'm giving you a lot of information, maybe a little bit too much. I know sometimes our brains can't take in too much. So if you need a pause or stop here and come back to this later, or you got everything you needed, that's all right. But I'm just sharing with you. Something that I've seen with my clients is that connection in exercise is really helpful for being in that window of capacity, because really we want to feel safe, we want to feel connected, we want to feel joyful and playful with exercise. If you can, dance and let go a little bit in the middle of a workout, that's a good sign that you're having fun. And one way to do that is with others who feel safe, and that's a way to be connected in movement. Okay. That's the exercise part. What does this have to do with food? Oh my goodness, it has so much to do with food. For us humans, food is more than just energy and function. It contains history, memories, it's comfort for us, it's connection, it's generosity, it's nature, it's story, it's beliefs. We hold all of these things because we are more than just robots. We're more than just physical chemicals. We are emotional beings, and we are existential beings, and all of this plays a part in our relationships with food. And especially with, generational ideas around food and cultural ideas around food, societal ideas, fitness ideas, there's so many messages we receive around food. And depending on how we grew up and where we grew up, and what body we were born into, will receive different messages around food. And we can use food to express. Food is such an easy way, because we relate to it every day, especially with all the messages that are convoluted, it's such an easy way to express different patterns in our minds. So we can use it to express a cycle of guilt and punishment. We can use it to express control and morality. We can use it to express a doldrum or ennui for life, lethargy, or lack of intensity. And it's never, if we feel like we have issues around food, or we feel like we're stuck in this trapped pattern around food, it's not really about the food. Food is inherently neutral, and we assign meaning to it. It's amoral, which means that there's no good or bad foods inherently. Of course, the chemicals interact with our bodies to produce different effects, and that can be an easy source of stress relief, or even feeling like if we control our bodies, it can feel good to restrict in some ways. So we can use food as a way to manipulate feelings, but we're not doing it for food itself. We're using it for other purposes when we're doing that. So for some of us, that might look like forgetting to eat when we feel stressed, or maybe eating mindlessly. And by that, I mean just snacking and oh, I just realized at the end when your hand is in the bottom of the bag. Oh, I didn't even realize I just finished a whole bag of these Cheetos Puffs, please. And we may eat comfort foods to soothe ourselves. We might resist food and feel better about ourselves. We might tend to eat the same foods over and over again. And there's nothing wrong with these things. Emotional eating is not wrong. I talk about this in the episode Dispelling the Emotional Eating Myth. So you can check that out if this resonates. But there's nothing wrong with you. It's just more about, just like the body scans, becoming aware of when we are stressed or when we are feeling triggered or what's happening in our bodies and responding in a way that is helpful. And that looks different for different situations. I had a client tell me how helpful the 4-H method has been for, her issues around weight and food and just asking questions and being more mindful. She says she has a Michelle in her voice asking questions like, it's not about what you're doing always, but why you're doing it and how it fits into a bigger framework. And come to the 4-H method to learn how to do this for your fitness and food, because it's like the best investment you can make for the rest of your life to learn this. So if you do feel like you're stuck in this pattern, or you do turn to food for comfort and it's becoming a problem maybe, or you feel like out of control, or maybe you realize that you're too in control. Again, there's nothing wrong with you. Your nervous system is trying to regulate to get into that window of capacity of safety. But if it's not working, it's not working. And the more you can understand your patterns, it becomes easier to shift. I know for me, when I was stressed, I would restrict. So earlier on, when I was in new situations, like when I went to college or when I went on this trip, I remember losing weight. I just would feel afraid to eat. That was a way that my body responded through stress. And I've seen that in other times in my life when I'm really stressed. My body sometimes will tend to restrict and just not want to eat. For others, it's the other way. They'll want to eat more when they're stressed. And I've been in that place too. So after that heavy restriction phase, I discovered how good sugar and salt and fats felt in my body, because damn, they do taste good, don't they? And so I would indulge in them for comfort. So I've also been on that side where I would eat a lot of sweet foods particularly, or salty foods, or have these different combinations that just felt good in my body, and there would be a relief. But then afterwards I would feel guilty and I was afraid of gaining weight, so I'd moderate my intake with my output, and I went back and forth, and that was not healthy. And I've gone away from that. But at different times in my life I had different responses to food, is what I'm saying, and you probably can relate to this. And I don't shame myself for this. I've actually this past recently I went through a situation that just I guess you could say teetered my sense of safety and stability, and I noticed that I felt this desire to go towards comfort foods. And in the past, even I would have berated myself and been like, oh, I shouldn't do this, but I'm gonna do it anyways, and then kind of felt bad. But I didn't feel bad about it at all. I was like, it makes sense, I'm feeling this way and I'm aware of it, and I know it's not gonna last forever, and I'm just gonna eat some cereal is my thing. Lately it's been cereal, just the taste of different flavor cereals with milk, with fruit and peanut butter. That's my thing. Don't knock it. I also had this idea for don't steal it, gourmet dessert cereals where you or even and then I told a friend and she was like, you should consider a dessert cereal bar. Maybe it's my next business venture, I don't know, but I love cereal. And so I've been eating cereal, more cereal. And I don't shame myself for it. I just noticed it, allowed it with zero guilt. And it was an act of self-care more than it was of destruction or kind of hating myself. There was no self-hatred in it. It was I'm feeling this sounds good, and this is a way to kind of make me feel a little bit happier, and I'm going to do it. So becoming aware of your eating in a way that's unique and fun, that's what you can do in the 4-H method. I know I talk about it a lot, but if you really want to put this stuff that I'm talking about into practice, 4-H method. Okay, cool. If you're looking for a free resource, and this resonates with you, when you want to feel safer with food, you can get my Goodbye Diets guide. In the link in the show notes or out on my website at mlroscoe.com. But I want to ask you some questions to finish up this food part. And these will help you identify maybe how your nervous system reacts in relation to food when it's feeling unsafe or sensing danger. How does it communicate? How does your body uniquely communicate? Do you tend to eat when you're higher, like maybe more active? Does it feel like there's like a lot of stress eating, and lots of times maybe like saltiness or crunchy foods can feel good, or even like sweet foods? Or do you tend to eat when you feel low, or like, oh, there's no point, I'm a little low, a little despondent, I'm just gonna, eat food and just eat and eat and eat? When do you notice you eat, maybe stress eat, to use that term? How do you see food when you feel dysregulated, like outside of that window of safety and connection and playfulness? How do you see food? And something that is so common for people with disordered eating behaviors or eating disorders that I definitely relate to is a desire to not eat around people because it feels like shame or something that's secretive. And so the opposite can be helpful, just like with exercises. If you can feel more safe and comfortable eating around others, that can be a good sign that you feel within your window of capacity. And of course, depending on where you're coming from, that can be some work and a skill that you build. But how do you see food when you're dysregulated? Can you notice that? Do you notice like when you're feeling really stressed, when you're in that fight, flight, or freeze or fawn? How do you see food? And then what does it feel like in your body, if you can remember, whether recently or a long time ago, maybe as a kid? What does it feel like to eat when you feel safe and connected with the world and with others around you and with your body? What does it feel like to eat when you feel safe and connected? This was a lot, and I'm so glad I did it. It was really fun to make this episode. I put a lot of references to other episodes and some free resources. I hope that this was helpful for you. Overall, learning to trust ourselves and use our inner resources with our bodies, and almost like learning a new language sometimes with our bodies. To go back to where we started, it can feel like learning a new language with your body when you have to undo some things. But it can be exciting, it can be fun, and it can be so empowering. Like the freedom that you desire with food and exercise is available to you right now. If you go to the 4-H method, I say at the end, you don't need this. You're already whole. There's nothing that you're lacking. But we can learn with skills, with support, with education, to trust ourselves, and practice to trust ourselves and use our inner resources in our bodies, and lean on support from others as well, trustworthy others, to really heal and discover what is already there, which is our wholeness and our joy and our peace and our freedom. So if the movement aspect resonated more with you, check out the Enjoy Movement guide. If the food aspect resonated more for you, check out the Goodbye Diets guide. And I don't recommend doing them at the same time. I recommend doing one at a time. And you are so worthy of all of this. You're so worthy of the effort to put into this. You're so worthy of feeling good in your body and with your body, in your body. And that's why I'm here. Have a beautiful day.